20 years and still going strong. Utah's #1 sports radio show for over 2 decades. You're listening to DJ and PK on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
DJ PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. We're joined by Steve Cleveland, former BYU and Fresno State basketball coach. Steve, good morning.
Morning.
Steve is a guy who grew up in Fresno and played college basketball at UC Irvine for the Anteaters back in the Crawford Hall days before they had the glorious Brent Center. You have Laker history deep in your soul. And PK and I were just talking about, are they going to be what they were going to be again? They think they're all that. They can't believe they got turned down by this coach, but maybe they shouldn't have been surprised by that. I think since Jerry Buss passed away, the kids just don't have the magic touch. And maybe Jerry, good fortune. And they had the #1 pick the right year to get Magic. Are they going to be what they were again? Was Hurley right to turn them down? When you heard that, as a coach who thought about moving and sometimes did and sometimes didn't, what did you think as the whole Hurley thing played out?
I have watched that, and I think for me, you're going to make a like that where. Can you hear me, guys?
You did cut out. You're back.
We can hear you now, yeah.
I'm back. Okay. Sorry about that. It didn't surprise me. And I know the money was there, and I just don't think it's a real stable situation. And I think that obviously he could have made it more stable and might have been what it was. And I haven't really heard any real significant conversations that he's had about this other than that he's decided about going back and doing and finishing what he's doing. But there just seems to be I don't know what the crowd is that's hanging over the Lakers. I mean, Darvin Ham, he was a really solid coach, had good success, did the things that he was supposed to do. I'm just not sure who's really making the call here. Is this a LeBron James deal? I mean, I can't imagine him not wanting him to come in. But I just think, for me, it's just real unsettling. It's been really hard for me to be a Laker fan. Because I grew up, as you did mention. I grew up. I watched games. I'd lived down there. But I just feel like they don't have the stability and they don't have the leadership right now. They need to make some decisions, obviously. But I've just not liked the path that I've watched. And maybe I'm completely wrong on this, but I just have not really felt comfortable being a Laker fan. Not so much how they played, but just how they approach things. And, we recognize all of the history there and all the championships and all the things that have happened. For the last 3 or 4 years, it's been disappointing to watch this team play. And I'm not pointing a finger at anybody, but to me, it starts with, the head of your organization, and you've got LeBron James there, who's had a significant say in how a lot of things have happened. But I'm just not comfortable. It didn't surprise me at all. I just there's too many questions unanswered. I don't have the answers to them, but I've never really felt good like I did when I was younger. And there was just a winning attitude, and I just haven't seen that in a long time. I know they won a championship 3 or 4 years ago in the bubble, and it's not like I dislike the guys there. In fact, I like some of the younger players that have been brought on, but leadership-wise, there's just something missing, and it's been hard for me to be a fan, to be honest with you.
What do you think about the potential success of college guys going to the NBA? Because I'm trying to think of guys who've really been able to make that transition, and it seems like there's been some decent guys, but then it doesn't work, and they end up leaving, whatever it might be. Obviously, Pitino is probably the most highest profile guy, but there's been others too from that perspective. What do you think's going on there that has prevented that type of transition to be successful?
Well, I think one is the money. The money is obviously available there, but there's just so much change, and I think that you go 1 or 2 years in the NBA and things go, you're gone. It isn't, I mean, they're really quick to make changes when things aren't happening the way they should happen. And I think the long-term security of being at a big-time college program where you have that and you're comfortable there, and it's just not the constant flux of, and listen, with all the big-time college programs, there's lots of media attention. There's a lot of scrutiny in the world we live in today. Everything is transparent. But in the NBA, for me, it just seems that it's in flux all the time. And it's kind of a situation where if you've got a great college thing going on, you've got a good staff, you've had long-term success. I just think there's a little more wisdom in how guys are handled at the collegiate level, and there's relationships, and everything in the NBA is driven by what have you done for me lately, and there just isn't the continuity that you have. Now, mind you, there's some great NBA coaches that have, forgotten more than I know. I mean, they're just great people in the NBA, but I just think for college coaches, there's always got to be a question mark. Is this really the best thing that I could do? And it's not to say that coach won't come back 3 or 4 or 5 years from now and, finishes at UConn and decides to take a swing at the NBA. But I just don't like the continuity, and just everybody is subject to scrutiny day in and day out, from social media to all the experts in the business that, the talking heads and all the things that are going on every day. There's just not a real feeling of security no matter what's going on. And change is what, professional sports are about. But the NBA especially, when you're only dealing with maybe 17 or 18 players, things happen. And so I think more than anything, that's how I see that, is that if you're really successful, and that's, you've got a lot of successful college coaches, what am I giving up? What's the trade-off here to become a Laker coach or whatever NBA program it is, team it is that in 2 or 3 years it can just turn real quickly. And you're not only dealing with coaching situations and leadership situations and management, but you're also dealing with players. Not very often do players get coaches fired, but in the NBA that does happen. It could happen in college, but it's not prevalent like it is. So there's unsettling things in the NBA in terms of long-term security, and it's not all like that. But that's just when I think about the NBA and I think about security and where that's at. Change happens quickly, and it can be a player that gets you fired. It can be a GM that gets you fired. It can be, regardless of, what you've done, and they're listening to the public. They're listening to the talking heads, and just too much unsettling things for me when you look at it. So it's not surprising that he didn't take the job.
How big a pull is home for a lot of coaches? I mean, for the coaches, it is a big pull. Do they get out of coaching because coaching requires people to move so much? Because PK's brought up, Hurley's a Jersey guy. Storrs is just on the other side of New York City, basically. Why the heck go out to L.A. if you're at home and you value it? How many coaches think like that?
Guy went home here.
Yeah, right.
Steve Cleveland did that.
He went back to Fresno.
Yep. No, I think of my own experience and a lot of things that, because I think, I have not really even shared this probably publicly, but I will just tell you this, that the experience that I had at BYU was unbelievable. And it was hard. It was hard. You're talking about a time when the program was really struggling and there was just so much uncertainty. And to be involved in something that you rebuild, it can wear you out, and but I mean, some of my greatest memories are the coaches, the players. I mean, so much respect and what we were able to do. It's so different now. I'm thinking of the change of BYU now and what that looks like and what it looked like when I came here. But as you go through that process, and that last year that I had at BYU was really difficult on me. I mean, we had expectations, and we had great young people in the program that I was excited about. And I kind of went through a real difficult time personally. And I never had thought about leaving BYU ever. then when that happened, even to this day, obviously going back to my hometown to kind of rebuild another program, and financially there were benefits there that I did not have at BYU, but it was never kind of about the money. It was always about an opportunity, and in my gut and my feelings as I went back home, and what I thought was going to be just a great thing. Well, there were some things I underestimated, in terms of where they really were, and there wasn't the kind of transparency that I thought we'd have with the president of the school and the AD of them when they'd actually find. And it was just one of those things that when I got there, things weren't as they were, and I don't have any regrets, because I loved going back there and trying to rebuild this thing, and we did. We got through some. And so we've talked about this on the show before, just going to the NC2A and meeting with them and dealing with the death penalty and all the things that were happening. Those weren't things I expected when I got there. It just hadn't been taken care of, and maybe I didn't ask all the right questions. But I'll never regret going back to Fresno. I first of all, I have so many friends, so many experiences as a high school and a junior college coach, and the players I have lifelong relationships with. But it was way harder than I thought it was going to be, and things outside of my control. So, yeah, guys do leave, and it happens all the time. I feel like I just had two great experiences. I was so blessed to even be there. It was my path in college coaching wasn't logical. Didn't really make sense. We're not hiring junior college guys, and nobody know, and whatever the circumstances are. I'm glad they had the faith in me to do it, and that staff with Dave and Heath and just everybody that was involved in that program. We'll never forget those times.
And that beat writer for the Tribune.
Yes, one of my dear friends today. No, you know what I loved about you, Pat, is that you always told me how you really felt. You didn't sugarcoat things, but I appreciated that. It actually helped me be a better coach. You asked hard questions. I hadn't been asked a hard question at the high school or junior college level once, and all of a sudden you jump into this position, and every coach goes through it. I mean, Kevin Young, who has got a pedigree unlike anybody, he's going to have experiences in college that he never had in the NBA. And people are going to ask, and not that he didn't get asked hard questions. When you're not the head coach, you don't get asked the hard questions. But when you're an assistant, that you don't really. That's not a reflection of who you are. That's the head coach, and I'm sure that Coach Young, who I love everything he's doing, but he's going to go through experiences here that he's not had before. Even though he's been at the highest level, he hasn't been the one that had to be accountable for everything that was going on.
Right.
And I don't have any question he's going to handle it, but it is different. And so for me, that's what I loved about you, Pat. Is that you made me think, and when I went home, I thought, man, I didn't think about that, and the perception or whatever the thing was or whatever decisions I made. So I didn't really look for the media to help me with my coaching, but interestingly enough, there were times where there's Pat or anybody else that would ask me hard questions, got me to think, and got me to be better. Because sometimes I did make changes. I did need to think about my staff, and I needed to think about, the personnel that we had and what we're doing. And it's every day. And again, like I said, I spent 12, 13 years in high school, another 7 or 8 in Juke. So 20-some years, I never really ever had anybody ask me a really hard question. And then, you jump into this, and it's completely different. So it helped me. It helped me become a better coach. My experience in Fresno, I will never regret going back there, but it was really hard. And I was surprised with some things that I had to go through with the NC2A and all the things that happened. But I have great memories there, and obviously being here in Utah, being back here and seeing players and former players and coaches, this was BYU was kind of a life-changing experience for me. It took me down a path that I didn't really ever think would happen, and really hadn't been a dream of mine to be a head coach. And God bless Lynn Archibald for, reaching out to me, and and sharing things with me, and just telling me you need to get involved in this. And so there was a lot of people that really helped me there, but anyway, that's my take on that, and it's just I'm just so grateful to have been in this business and to be with great people, and to be with great people like yourselves, who have helped me refine my process and help me be a better coach.
You talk about Kevin Young, and, man, he's just taken this town by storm, and he hasn't even coached a game yet. And as I look at the way he's doing his stuff, it seems to me, I talked about this with DJ, that he's really in a win-now mode because, he made hires of guys who have connections and can get him players right now. And you look at BYU historically, the way they've had success is through grinding and building rather than instant success. And so he's got this kid, the Agor kid, supposed to be a potential lottery pick next year, 25 draft. If it works out, he might be one and done. I mean, you can't turn down that kind of talent if that talent wants to come, for sure. But at the same time, the one and done, you raise an eyebrow on that, and you wonder the way BYU's path to success has been. You get some top-end talent, and then you get some role players that you develop. You look at Akini Young. By the time I think you brought him in, and he became a league MVP. Well, he wasn't that when you first got him, right? And there's a number of guys that I can cite, but you got this top-end talent, and it might only be here for 35 games, but you got to take it. Just give us your thoughts on all that as he tries to build this thing into what he wants.
You know what? Those are great thoughts because traditionally it has taken time. As it has in most colleges where it takes time. And now, unless you're Kentucky and some of those folks who have had 40 or 50, NBA draft picks and stuff, I think Kevin. I haven't talked to Kevin, so and I don't know him. Everybody that I've talked to just loves him and what he's doing. And you're right; it is a different time and a different process than what most, especially at BYU, has gone through. And I think the one thing that coming into that situation was change and lots of energy. I can't fault him at all for this path down the road with trying to get guys for a year. You're right. And typically when you talk about BYU basketball, it's building and developing. It's developing. And even when, I looked at my teams, I looked at all the teams with Coach Rose and all the success he had and what he did. We found players. I was involved in the recruiting with most of those young men as well, but I just watched Coach. And over time, you just develop and you have that continuity, and you can have success long term. And with Coach Young, who's doing it a different way, doesn't mean it's not the right way. It's his way, and everything from the outside looking in appears to be this could be really cool to bring in those type of high level guys, and obviously with the portal and NIL, there's so many things that exist today that maybe all of this is going to be the way the future is. And having guys stay in a program, because you're right, the success of BYU over the years has been keeping guys in the program for 2, 3, or 4 years and having that continuity, having that maturity, and allowing them to develop physically, mentally, and emotionally. In the one and dones, you're not going to have that. And so I think the key thing for me is that whoever a great young man he is, I mean, this coaching staff certainly knows this young man. They know people when he was at Real Madrid. And they're not going to take individuals that are not good people, but it is one of those things that it's so different that you start to ask questions. Is this the right way to do it? You know what? I think we give time to see maybe it is the right way to do it. It's time for change. And I think over time we'll see that. But I still believe long term that the development part of players staying in a program for 2 or 3 or 4 years is the focus of BYU. I can't imagine them completely getting away from that because I just think that's why they've been able to have long-term success for a long time. Maybe not winning national championships, and maybe this is the process. Maybe this is how we go about getting to Sweet 16s and getting to, Final Eights and getting to a Final Four and winning a national championship. This might be the model to make that happen because it hasn't happened at BYU. And so adding some elite European players and getting into the portal and spending the money to get outstanding talent, that's probably going to be the new look for all of college basketball. But it's a real change for BYU. There's no question about it. And I'm kind of excited to see what happens. I have faith in that administration. And even though the only person I know is Chris Burgess, who is a dear friend, but I just, everything I see about these guys seems to be like they're making the right steps at the right time in a different time for college basketball. It's just not BYU. I mean, when you start looking at the NIL, when you start looking at the ability to go to school at 4 different schools in 4 years, you have to be prepared to change and deal with that, because if you don't get control of that, you don't have control of that thing, it can all come crumbling down. And so the fact that you've got 6 or 7 guys, that you have a chief of staff, and that you've got different assistants with different roles, well, all that's always been part of it. But I think these guys now have a lot more responsibility and a role in helping navigate this, because the navigation of what college basketball is today requires a real attention to detail. And I love what Kevin Young has done, and I can't wait to meet him and talk to him and see where this is going. But I just think that it is different, and because it's different doesn't mean it's not the right way to do things. Maybe this is the right way to go forward, moving forward, especially when, as you said, Pat, when you look back and you think BYU's success, long-term success, even though it's not at the highest level, has been because they developed players and stayed in the program and didn't have a lot of transfers. But that's not the world we live in anymore. And maybe to get to win a national championship or get to Final Fours, which every coach has a dream to do, maybe this is a better path, and we'll just have to see how it plays out. But I'm excited about it, to watch it. Not, obviously BYU, I'm so connected to that school, but it's just fun to watch college basketball and to see the changes that are being made and what's being done, and just such an attention to detail that you got to surround yourself with really good people. I will just make last comment on this is, again, not knowing Kevin Young, but just from the outside looking in, he's brought in people that he knows, that he has relationships with, that if, yes, a lot of them have coached maybe in the NBA, some of them have been in college and so forth, but that staff of men and the support that they're going to need, you got to have that trust, and you've got to have a really tight staff, and it appears that Kevin has that. He has relationships with these guys, and it's going to be a fun journey for me to watch and all of us to watch and see how it plays out. And you know what? You guys get to get on the radio every day and talk about it. Yep. But, the good, the bad, and everything that goes with it. But I'm excited. I'm excited, and I think it is. We live in a world now that change is okay, and that this is a new direction. You can never get away from relationships and work ethic and trust and all of the character traits that one needs to keep a team together. I don't care who's on your roster. If those guys, you don't have that chemistry, don't worry about winning championships or getting to the Final Four. And I can't imagine this group not having that attention to detail and making sure that all of those things are in place, and that the intangibles become just as important as the talent if things aren't right.
Steve Cleveland, former BYU and Fresno State basketball coach, join us here on The Zone. Steve, thanks for a few minutes. We appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
When we come back, a U.S. Open update with Brian Taylor next. Stay with us.
This is DJ and PK, Utah's highest rated sports radio morning show for over 20 years.
Ridiculously good.
Presented by Murdoch Hyundai, Utah's #1 Hyundai dealer for 16 years in a row on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. This Uinta Golf U.S. Open update is brought to you by Mountain Land Supply, Zions Bank, Black Desert Resort, Hoops Vision, and Siegfried and Jensen. And now, Real Golf Radio's Brian Taylor.
DJ, PK, and BT. Brian, good morning.
Good morning, guys. How we doing?
Good. Usually we can really hash this out, and there's a million things to talk about, but right now it feels like with the U.S. Open on the horizon, we have to just say Scheffler or the field. Who you got?
Yeah, you know what? Do you remember when we used to do this? We've been doing this a long time, right? All the way back to when Tiger was getting asked that question, Tiger of the field. And, you know, I remember, DJ, specifically, you and I debated this a little bit, and it seemed like you were almost foolish to pick either one, right? I mean, statistically, you'd be foolish to pick, you know, one player over the field, and yet Tiger was that one player that seemed to, you know, be the sure bet, almost the better bet during his heyday. So now we got Scottie Scheffler doing Tiger-like things, right? Dominating. I mean, the first player to win 5 times before the U.S. Open since I think it was like Arnold Palmer in 1962. So he's doing some amazing things. So you start to say, well, is this Scottie's to lose? Yeah, but Scottie versus the field, I still think that's probably a little bit of a foolish bet. I think I'd take the field on that. But, man, the guy, with what he's doing with Ted Scott, there's only 2 things that have been able to stop him so far. Basically an arrest and Ted Scott going to his daughter's graduation. So none of those things are expected to happen this week. So you like Scottie's chances for sure.
You talk about the field, and I was listening to Hank Haney, and he blasted the USGA and all this stuff because he said the field is weak. It's one of the weakest, if not the weakest, U.S. Open field. And then he went down, and it's basically, as I took it, he called it the LIV, not the live. He spelled it out, or pronounced it that way, in terms of guys not being available to participate in this tournament. And he thought that it was a joke. So he calls the field weak, which may help Scheffler. But what are your thoughts on the weak field, according to Hank Haney?
Well, I mean, there's only essentially 2 players not inside the top 50. I think what he's probably alluding to is the question marks surrounding the world rankings, and
yes.
Is it still a viable, system?
Well, that was his point.
Given
no.
That LIV. Now, I would say that the world rankings are certainly skewed at this point in time. They've always been interesting because they're on a 2-year rolling cycle, and so if you take a few tournaments off, you basically just have finishes that are dropping. Points are just dropping off every week. They click off, that kind of thing. So, you could have a hot run, and it'll hold on for only so long once it starts ticking away. And so you got guys that are falling in the world rankings. But I don't know. I mean, I would like to know who are the guys that he was pointing out that aren't in this field, that need to be in this field in order to justify it being a strong field. And I can't think of any. I mean, we're not going to go back to the Taylor Gooch thing again, right?
He lists him and Neiman, among others.
Yeah, so we could... We could maybe we could go to the Caitlin Clark discussion here, right?
Let's do it.
I mean, do we really care if we're tuning in to watch it because Neiman is better than, I don't know, pick a guy that's popular but maybe shouldn't be as high in the world rankings as what Joaquin Neiman is? Is Joaquin Neiman really moving the needle when it comes to major championship golf? I mean, is Caitlin Clark moving the needle when it comes to women's basketball? It's undisputed. So then why wouldn't she be on the Olympic team? I think those are some of the things where you're like, let's look at it for what it is. We do want the best players competing for the highest prizes, if you will, right? But you also have to understand that there is nobody that puts on an event that doesn't want to have a star-studded leaderboard going into the weekend that causes people to tune in and watch, get the eyeballs, get the advertising dollars, get everything that they need in order to make a successful event. And so when I look at this, I'm like, look, we got 78 of the top 100 players in the field this week, right? Or, I don't know how you go down the list. Scottie Scheffler, Colin Morikawa, Rory McIlroy, Xander Schauffele. I mean, we could stop right there and it's going to be exciting. But then you also got Bryson's in there, Tony's in there. Oh, Patrick Reed's not in.
Right.
And that's going to make you – are you going to tune out? Are you going to go play golf Saturday instead of watching the U.S. Open because Patrick Reed's not playing?
Well, yeah, because I want to know he's going to be able to cheat and get away with it.
There's a lot of sand here. He is known for his sand tactics. So
the people of Chile hate you now because you dismissed Joaquin Neiman.
Oh, come on. Look, I actually enjoy Joaquin Neiman's game. It's not against Joaquin Neiman. The point is you make a decision to go play somewhere else, and that's the consequences of it. So be it. It's not the end of the world. It doesn't reduce this championship by any stretch of the imagination.
Rahm's playing. Cam Smith is playing. Koepka's playing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so
These
that
guys
to
are all
me.
playing.
And
Yeah.
for the other live guys, can they go through the U.S. Open qualifiers, or is there some barrier there?
No, they can go. Some
Yeah,
of them
I
chose
mean, Neiman
not to
didn't
go play in the
qualify.
U.S. Open qual. And that's the other thing that should be pointed out. This is the U.S. Open. It's not the U.S. Invitational. So, you do have the opportunity to jump in and go through qualifying. Adam Scott did that. Sergio did that. Sergio did it and missed, but then he got in as an alternate. Adam Scott just missed, got in as an alternate, right? So, going through the process gives you an opportunity.
All right, we've got our draft coming up with Bob, and we will talk to you on, later in the week on Thursday, and you will assess our draft opportunities. Do you have a name on the way out the
All
door
right.
other than Scheffler that we should be looking at?
Joaquin Neiman.
Yeah, Bob
draft pick
wanted
there.
me to tell you Bob wanted me to make sure that y'all picked Joaquin Neiman and Patrick Reed.
Yeah, I'll
So-
take Reed and Neiman and see how that works for me. Pick a couple guys more in
but
it.
I will tell you that he said don't bring up Colin Morikawa. So he did tell me to say not bring up Colin Morikawa. So
Okay.
I didn't bring up Colin Morikawa, just so you know.
That a kid. All right,
All right.
Thank you, Brian. We love it. Appreciate you coming on.
Okay, see you, boys.
Brian Taylor, Real Golf Radio, here on Saturday mornings right here on The Zone. Coming up, David Dwork, Florida Panther writer for the Hockey News, is going to join us at 9:05. Up next, the Lakers. Are they humiliated? And is there an opportunity out there that would double down on the humiliation? I mean, it won't happen, but if it did, would that really be brutal? We'll get to that next. Stay with us.
The guys you know and trust, talking about the teams you can't live without. This is DJ and PK on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Qualifying winners for the U.S. Open Uinta Golf giveaway. It is time, people. Caller 12-801-575-ZONE. Right now, will be entered to win. You can qualify, 801-575-ZONE. The 12th caller will qualify and will be given a golfer. And if that golfer wins the U.S. Open, you'll receive the same brand driver that player has at the U.S. Open. Call right now, 801-575-ZONE. More qualifiers coming up later this morning. PK, the question of the morning. What does it say that Dan Hurley turned down the Lakers? Josh says, it says the NCAA season is half as long. It says that Hurley is the king at UConn. It says the Lakers coach has to answer to LeBron, not the other way around. It says that Hurley's an East Coast guy, and that if this were the Knicks' job, it might be a different decision. Now, the Knicks are coming off a big season, so we don't expect them changing coaches. I think they were pretty happy with the step forward they took. But do you think Hurley would do that?
Yes.
The Knicks and the Celtics and the Sixers keeps him close enough to Jersey.
Well,
Those are
the
big-time
Knicks,
jobs.
It's his jersey.
Yeah, the Knicks is across the
he
river.
was 5 minutes away.
Right.
Yeah.
But not the Lakers or Warriors. But
I see where you're going, because based on my experience as a kid and still having a ton of family there, and it's no surprise, you can figure it out living no matter where you live, that the Knicks are where it's at. That's the pinnacle for those folks back there.
for a guy who wants to win, the Celtics and Sixers aren't that far away. The Nets and the Wizards seem to have issues that maybe you wouldn't want to go near because you're not going to win.
But everyone was a Knicks fan.
Right. The Knicks.
It just...
Josh.
You had Jets and Giants kind of took each other apart a little bit, split them, I mean.
Oh, really?
But
I always thought Giants was like 80-20, 70-30 over Jets fans. But Knicks is probably, in my mind, is like 95-5 or more.
Yeah.
I saw a list once. You'll love this because you hate it when I reference TV ratings. But I saw a list of all the TV ratings and, different markets. There's issues going on with distribution. But the two lowest rated teams, and they had to throw Toronto out because of Canada. But of the U.S. teams, the lowest rated teams were the Nets and the Clippers.
And TV ratings?
And TV ratings. Like, you can go into those markets 5 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. You can go into those markets and you sell tickets because people want to see the NBA and stars are coming through town, and there's lots of companies to sell to. But are you really going to capture the soul of the city when you're competing with the Lakers and the Knicks? No.
I can remember as a kid, when you'd go shopping and you'd go by the TV section and the TVs would be on. And when the Knicks were playing, every TV
was on the Knicks.
Yeah, like 30
and
TVs.
people would stop in front of
Oh,
them.
yeah.
Right.
And you'd sit there, or stand there, with people you grew up with, your neighbors, you knew, people in the community, and you'd talk about the game while you were shopping. I remember that. I remember it vividly as a kid.
Well, that's a good post from Josh. Josh, good job right there, bringing that up. Excellent.
And I had read stuff or heard stuff about that it would be a different situation. It's why they didn't think he would go that way.
He's not closing the door on the NBA.
No, I think he's openly talked about it.
The coast-to-coast move.
Now that he's won 2 titles, he can openly talk about anything. He wants to start talking about politics, he can do that.
He can. But there is a difference between talking about it and being serious about actually doing it.
Certainly, but he has broached it.
He has, right. I've read the quotes. Yeah. They're out there.
And if that's something that he wants to do and he's still young enough, the conversation and the context that I heard was that he wanted to make his mark at coaching because he sucked as a player compared to his brother. So that was a little harsh.
Because your brother was awesome.
Right. But he still played college ball.
Right.
He stayed local at Seton Hall.
Right.
But
he didn't just play college ball. There's 300 and, I don't know, whatever. I don't know how many there were when he played. 350 schools. And, if you're in the Big East,
right, that's what I'm saying.
Top 100 of those.
But the way he said it, compared to his older brother,
I know, but
his older brother had all the success and won the titles. Blah,
I know,
blah,
but
blah.
people in Jersey are harsh, right? So it was a harsh take, but
tend to be hard on themselves, believe it or not, which I think you can.
I can. I
he was talking
can.
about how he was making his mark over here, and he's certainly been better than his brother in the coaching aspect of it, although he's probably got an easier job. Oh, did you hear what he said, too? I think it was in the Final Four, one of the press conferences. He said, they don't give him the support out there. If they'd give him the support,
he'd get it done.
Yeah. And he really went hard on it, and it was something that people like, whoa. And you have to sit back and think, okay, is Bobby really a crappy coach, or is he just in somewhat of a wasteland? And then at that point, and stuff that I heard is they went over in Tempe and started dumping a bunch of money into it, and now he's got 2 or 3, 4, 5-star guys who've come aboard.
But the best argument for this is what you were saying last season: is there are all these former Sun Devils who are playing well for NCAA tournament teams and all transferred out.
Yeah.
Well, none of them, not one of them that I heard, and I think you would have said it if I'd missed it. You would have heard it. Not one of them blasted Hurley. They all went for a better opportunity.
Right.
And so I think, he's sticking up for his brother, and so you got to factor that in. But at the same time, there's not a little bit of truth to what he's saying. There's a lot. And the fact is, if you're at a school that's trying to be good in football, the basketball has to take a back seat. And Hurley's at a school where football takes a back seat to basketball. They're relatively new to football.
Dan Hurley, yeah.
Yeah, the UConn job, basketball is really, really important. It's football, but it wouldn't be a stretch to say it's the third most important sport on campus. And football needs to be important, so I'm sure they're investing in it. But women's basketball there, they expect Final Fours and national titles.
Yeah, they just signed Uriema too.
Yeah, they just gave him 5 years.
And he's like 70.
Yeah. So I get why sitting at UConn and seeing what he gets, he would look out at his brother at Arizona State and think, you guys are.
Yeah.
First off, the Pac-12 isn't invested enough in sports. They probably think that. And then secondly, they think they're too invested in football and they ought to be helping a basketball program.
Right.
And the way good players have left that program, it's hard to argue with them. When we come back, Stanley Cup Finals. Florida up 2-0. David Dwork covers the Florida Panthers for the Hockey News. He's going to join us next. Stay with us.